When you have a game of this magnitude, all of the focus is on the superstars, which can allow some other players to be able to break out, which Ducks could prove to be X factors on Saturday night. Plus, the preview and prediction you've all been waiting for. It's time to dive into the whiteout. The Mummies are on the prowl here on this edition of That Show Out West.
This place has everything. In fact, the grass is damn green in Eugene.
That performance deserves a holy wallawa.
It's a feeling you cannot explain.
This place is louder than any other venue in the Big Ten.
This program is staged to compete and to win championships.
Welcome to the Big Ten, Oregon.
And welcome to That Show Out West for That Team Out West. I'm Ted LeBrew. I want to begin today's show with a little bit of an apology. This show is usually on Thursdays, been really good about that Monday and Thursday routine throughout the year, but this week has just been utter insanity. Work decided that this week was going to be the busiest week of the fall so far, made some other podcast appearances as well, and there's just a lot of other commitments and a lot of other things have come up this week, and I like this show to be quality. Could I have put out a show yesterday? Probably. But I feel like I just hadn't quite gotten there in my preparation. Like Dante Moore says, my preparation is my separation. And I feel like we want to be able to separate ourselves with a knowledgeable show and a well-prepared show. And I feel like this Friday allowed me the extra day to be able to get to that point. So this may be the last preview that you see. This may be the last prediction that you see. Hopefully, I have saved the best for last because I've heard a lot of Duck fans taking in a lot of content through many different sources and many different people this week, which is great. That's why the independent media world is so great, because there's so much great content out there to be able to break down. And I've been trying to take in as much of it as I possibly can as well. As the great Hunter Hearst Helmsley once said, it's time to play the game. And it's time to break down the game, and it's time to talk about everything Oregon and Penn State. But when Oregon is going to be playing the game on Saturday night, they are going to be looking good doing it because they look good every single week. Let's dive in and talk about uniforms, folks. It is time to unleash the mummy. I really like these uniforms. What they'll be wearing in the whiteout. I know that there were rumors, hey, maybe we'll see the Stormtrooper uniforms. Maybe we'll see an all white like Oregon has worn in the past. But, of course, with the whiteout, wearing all white, you don't want to blend in too much maybe, right? You don't want to steer too much into it. You want to have a little bit of contrast, and I think this uniform provides a little bit of contrast, certainly for the Ducks. You've got the black helmets, with the silver wings, the chrome wings, you've got the white jerseys, you've got the black pants, and you got those white cleats, and they certainly look that they might glow in the dark. So this is a uniform that's very similar to what they wore in prime time last year against Wisconsin, but you've got the alternate mummy logo there on the gloves, you've got the lime green shine there on the cleats, so just taking it up a notch. Just taking it up a level year by year by year. So really good contrast, I think, with that's going to be able to go against the all-white crowd in this matchup. Leads me into my uniform power rankings. Now, here's the thing. I grew up, I still am, a Green Bay Packers fan. So I love the combination of the colors of green and yellow, which is maybe a reason why I'm doing an one of the many reasons, I should say, why I'm doing an Oregon Ducks football show weekly right now. But it was going to be hard for me considering how much those colors really pop out to me. It was hard for me to put two black uniforms at number 1 and number 2, considering we got a really good green and yellow uniform that they wore against Northwestern. I'm a sucker for the O. Okay, you put an O on anything, and I immediately love it. And I'm a sucker for the green and yellow. Like the yellow helmet with the green O and the green face mask against Northwestern, that's just elite. That when you talk about the more traditional Generation O uniforms, that helmet just is put on a pedestal, I think, when you talk about that. I think that this is a really good uniform. Of course, the Shoe Duck sitting there at number 1. You've got that Northwestern uniform that I just mentioned at number 2. I've got this one sliding in the number 3 spot above the uniform that they wore against Montana State at number 4 with the yellow helmet and the green wings, and then the all greens that they wore against Oklahoma State sitting there at number 5. But this is almost maybe like a 2B. I think like the mummy, the sleeves, the glove, all that kind of things, the alternate logo, the glow-in-the-dark stuff. I thought about maybe putting it at number 2, that stuff would get it to that point, but I just couldn't quite get there. 2A and 2B, maybe this would be the 2B. I think it's really close with that uniform that they wore earlier this season against Northwestern. But this is kind of where I stand with my uniforms as of right now. Now let's turn our attention to this game. Oregon traveling out to Happy Valley, Pennsylvania to take on the Penn State Nittany Lions, and safe travels to the sections of the flock that is making the journey over to central Pennsylvania. Now, when you talk about this type of matchup, everybody's going to be talking about the stars. They talk about the quarterbacks. They talk about Dante Moore. They talk about Drew Aller. They talk about the pass catchers. They talk about Kenyon Sadiq. They talk about Decorian Moore. They talk about those big-time pass rushers coming off the edge. They talk about Dennis Sutton. They talk about Mateo Uiagalelei. They talk about like Penn State's running backs, one of the best tandems in the country in Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. That's all anybody is really talking about right now. But media, fans, we're talking a lot about it, and you better best believe that the coaching staffs are game planning against those superstar players right now. And when you have this type of game plan going on and all of the focus and all of the attention is on those guys, it allows maybe some of these other lesser talked about players to be able to step up and have a really big game, and maybe their biggest game of the season so far. And this point really leads into a question and a text I got on the TSOW Talking Text line, which is where I want to dive into right now. This comes from Zach from Atlanta. The flock is nationwide. Zach asks a variety of questions, and we're going to dive into all of them. First, he says, so after his coming out party last year against Penn State in the Big Ten Championship, I would expect them to definitely game plan for Kenyon Sadiq. How do you think this opens things up for Jamari Johnson? More on that in just a minute. Also, do you think Stein schemes it up and gets him more involved? I think he's talking about Jamari Johnson there. What do you think would be the best way to attack Penn State? And then lastly, who do you think are 2 players from each side do you think are going to break out in this game, and why? Zach, you came through in the clutch. These are all great talking points, so let's dive into it. The first one that he asked, when you talk about Penn State game planning for Kenyon Sadiq, Penn State's like, Jim Knowles is like, dude, we can't have him score 2 touchdowns like he did last year. We can't have him hurdling over our guys, making our guys look silly like he did in Indianapolis last season. So let me kind of dive into that one first. I believe Oregon is going to do everything in their power to be able to really play this game focusing on the perimeter, taking advantage of their speed, taking advantage of their explosiveness. Because if they're able to do that consistently throughout this football game, I don't believe Penn State has the offensive firepower to match what Oregon wants to do. I think Kenyon Sadiq is going to be lined up out wide. I think he's going to be lined up in the slot a lot during this game, maybe more than we've seen so far this season, because I think that's where the matchup advantages really hold themselves for Oregon in this game, which allows, if Oregon's going 11 personnel, which allows Jamari Johnson to be that end line tight end more consistently and get more snaps, I think, during this game as well. I think there's a couple of reasons why I believe Sadiq's going to be lined up more in the slot, not wide, during this game. The matchup advantage. I think Sadiq can make these linebackers look silly. I think he's much faster. He's much more athletic than them. Their defensive backs, I think he's got a size advantage against them. And that's like, you put Kenyon Sadiq against anybody, and that's normally going to be the case. But specifically when I look at Penn State, I certainly see that in this game. And then like Sadiq's blocking ability, I think that might be as big a reason as any why you're going to see him on the perimeter. Get him out there early. We know he can certainly do it from his end line tight end spot. But I look at Penn State's defensive backs on film, And I've seen against some of these lower level opponents where they've been able to get out on the perimeter, whether it's been a screen, whether it's been a slant, a short passing concept, whatever it's been, where they've been some of these other teams that they've played against, they've been able to get out there and they've been able to move some of these defensive backs and have some of these shorter passing concepts go for 10 yards, go for 15 yards. Now, it hasn't happened a lot, but I've certainly seen it. And you got to really watch out for the little things when you have a program like Penn State playing a team like a Nevada or a Villanova or maybe some of the other, I can't even remember who the other team was that they played so far this season. That's kind of the level of competition that we've seen from PSU so far. So getting Kenyon Sadiq out there, having his fantastic blocking ability, just running over smaller defenders, I think it's going to be something that Will Stein is really going to set up in this game. I don't think like Will Stein in his game plan throughout the week is going to necessarily scheme things up, draw things up to get Jamari Johnson involved specifically. I could be very wrong on that, but I think he's going to look to get his, feed the studs is what he's all about. And when you talk about the studs on Oregon's offense, you know who you're talking about. You're talking about Kenyon Sadiq, the aforementioned Kenyon Sadiq. You're talking about Decorian Moore. Malik Benson has certainly been up there. Gary Bryant Jr. I think there's more guys in line, I think, ahead of Jamari Johnson right now. But because of what I said at the beginning of the show, and number two, the beginning of this segment, I think a lot of resources are going to be focused on those guys that I mentioned. And Jamari Johnson might be like the forgotten man in this game. We've seen him work the middle of the field, a little bit throughout the early part of this season. And when you get to a 3rd and 5 and a 3rd and 6, Oregon's got to have it. You got to have it. Or Penn State's got to stop it. Jamari might just get that matchup in the middle of the field, maybe against a linebacker. Maybe he uses his size against a safety. Whatever it is, he makes that catch. Nobody's got old number 9 on the radar. He makes the catch, maybe breaks the tackle, and he's ahead for 15, and the chains keep on moving down the field. I think Jamari Johnson could have an impact, could be an X factor in this game because all of the attention is going elsewhere, and that's really the crux of this segment, I think, that we're talking about right now. I also think Jamari Johnson could play a really big role in this game, helping out in pass protection out there. Penn State has really good edges. Oregon's offensive tackles have been fairly inconsistent this season despite giving up only 1 sack. So I think you're going to send tight ends out there to be able to chip in some of these pass protection situations. It wouldn't surprise me to maybe see, bring Kenyon Sadiq inside, maybe in some of these really key passing situations, and maybe have him chip right off the line of scrimmage to be able to help out Isaiah World and Alex Harkey. But specifically, having Jamari Johnson in there where you're going to rely, hey, Decorian get open, Kenyon get open, Malik get open. We need extra pass protection. It's 3rd and 7. It's 3rd and 8. It's a passing situation. They're going to bring in a NASCAR package. They're going to do a pass rushing package. Whatever they're going to do, we need to be able to bring in extra support to be able to help out our offensive tackles. I think you're going to see that from Jamari Johnson so far. He's probably better as a run blocker, but he's been a decent pass blocker. And just having extra bodies on the line, I think, is going to be able to help out as well. But like I said, I don't think there's going to be a conscious effort to maybe, hey, we got to get number 9, 5 catches in this game, 6 catches in this game. I certainly don't think that's going to happen, but he could certainly be the forgotten man when all is said and done on Saturday. Another question here from Zach. He says, do you think Stein schemes it up more to get him more involved? I just talked about that. What do you think would be the best way to attack Penn State? I'm going to talk about this in my preview, so I'm going to keep this short right now. I'm going to say it very quickly. Challenge the secondary and challenge the interior defensive line. I think you've got a speed advantage on the outside, and I think you've got a size advantage on the interior. Not necessarily on the outside, but on the interior. More on that a little bit later on during the program. Last thing that Zach asks and wants to know, who do you think are 2 players from each side to break out in this game and why? Let's dive into it. But before I reveal mine, I want to reveal one that Zach texted me. He says on offense, he's looking for Jeremiah McClellan and Jordan Davison. We're on the same wavelength as it pertains to offense. And then Ife Obadegwu and Dylan Thieneman, I like that on defense. I think the secondary has the potential to really show just how good they are, just to show how much better they are than Penn State's weapons on the outside. Let's get into my breakout players. On offense, I've got De'Aaron Hill and Malik Benson. I want to focus on, let's talk about Malik first. Mr. Consistent, Mr. Do-It-All. You ask him to do something, and he's been able to do it all season long. I love Malik Benson and how he's been able to play, and this was so needed with the loss of Evan Stewart in the spring for really a veteran wide receiver to be able to step up and fill this role. He's been really reliable. He's averaging 3.5 catches a game and 50 yards per game. He's been that steady target for them. A lot of focus, right? This is really what this segment is all about. A lot of focus on DeCorian, a lot of focus on Kenyon. Okay, you're going to have probably A.J. Harris, their top corner, out there on DeCorian Moore. Who's going to be covering Malik Benson? Probably the cornerback number 2. And Malik Benson has got a lot of speed, folks. If you're looking for somebody to create a big explosive play in this game, look no further than number 4. I think that he could be a big-time breakout candidate because I think Jim Knowles is looking around at this offense and being, we can't let Super Frosh uncork our defense. We can't let Kenyon Sadiq kill us in the middle of the field all game long. But that's the beauty of the Oregon offense. There's weapons everywhere. Malik Benson is a candidate for me to be able to break out in this game. Another one, true freshman running back De'Aaron Hill. The great thing about De'Aaron is he doesn't have to touch the ball a lot in this game to be a breakout player. He does not have to touch the ball a lot in this game to be able to be that X factor, that guy that can truly be a difference maker, because he is a home run threat. With one swing of the bat, with one carry, he can change the game, and this is why I love De'Aaron right now. Now, I want to really bring up something that I've seen from Oregon on film, something formationally, where he could make that one big play, middle of the third quarter, back and forth game. Maybe Oregon's got a 3-point lead, and it extends the Duck lead to a 2-score lead. Unleash this concept in this play. Will Stein, I know, Will, you know what you're doing. You're not listening to me right now, but this is something that I just have in mind for De'Aaron. They've lined him up in the slot a lot, and they've had, Noah Whittington, Jordan Davison, whoever at the running back position. They've brought De'Aaron Hill in motion. A lot of times they fake it to De'Aaron. Let's say he's going in motion from left to right, and then going from right to the left side of the offensive line, they then hand it to, let's just say in this case, Noah Whittington. What they're trying to do with the eyes of the linebackers, they're trying to get them to flow because they see what kind of a dangerous weapon 23 is. They're trying to get the eyes and the second level of the defense to flow in the direction of De'Aaron so then they can get the run game going the other way. If I'm Will Stein in this game, I want to be able to show that a lot. And Will Stein is a master of showing something, and then kind of maybe unveiling something different that we haven't seen yet out of that concept and out of that formation. So if I'm Oregon in this game, I'm faking it, handing it to the running back on the other side, I'm doing that concept that we've seen all season long. But then when you need to make that play, I think a couple of things could happen. If the linebackers aren't respecting, if they know the concept and they saw it on film and they've seen it during the game, and they're not respecting De'Aaron Hill going to the other side, especially if De'Aaron is motioning to the wide side of the field, number one, give him the football and get some great blocking around the end. His speed can certainly create an electric play. But one other thing that I thought about in an RPO type of situation, where you're lined up Whittington by the side, you bring De'Aaron Hill in motion, you fake it to him, but you don't hand the ball to Noah Whittington. Because I think when the Penn State defense would see that, be like, all right, they're going this direction. They're doing that same concept. They're going to hand it to Noah. Let's flow this side to the run game. But instead, you pull the ball and then wheel route down the sideline to old De'Aaron Hill to get yourselves on a play that nobody saw coming, because I don't think anybody on the Penn State Nittany Lions defense is watching this show right now. That's like textbook Will Stein to be able to kind of unveil something new out of a concept and a formation that they've been showing continuously. Like, that's the thing I think about Will. He's shown a lot. He's shown a lot on film, and I think that really puts a lot of stress on Jim Knowles and this defense right now. It's like, dude, we got to cover all of these things right now, but I think there's certain things out of certain formations that we have not seen so far this season. So, De'Aaron Hill, with one swing of the bat, I think could be an X factor and a breakout player in this game. To the defensive side of the football, I think that the secondary could have themselves a big game. I know Ife Obadegwu and Brandon Finney and Dylan Thieneman will certainly get a lot of attention in the secondary, but I'm going to go with, this is a breakout performance. I'm going a little bit maybe out on a limb right now. Sione Lalea is one of those second-team corners, and he's playing as good as anybody consistently in the Oregon secondary right now. He has the highest Pro Football Focus coverage grade of any Duck corner this season. And when you factor in his size, and then you factor in, kind of what Penn State wants to do, right, that they don't go deep a lot. Okay, this is not a team that stretches the football down the field. So having a guy with his size there's a lot of outbreaking routes to the sideline. Having his length to be able to get his arm in there really changes the type of throw that Drew Aller can make, and really makes it tough to complete those types of passes on the outside. And then when you kind of have those in-breaking routes, deep in, slant, whatever it is, you have the big body of Sione Lalea that makes it a lot tougher to be able to do that. So I look for Sione. I think they have a really big game, and maybe he's somebody, remember like Kingston Lopa covered Tyler Warren last year. Maybe Sione gets kind of moved into that into the slot a little bit to be able to cover Luke Reynolds. The Penn State has split out Luke Reynolds in the slot a good amount this season. So I think Sione could be a candidate to be able to break out in this game. Last one I'll say on defense, Tion Gray. Tion Gray had his best game as a Duck last week. He's got a ton of size in there. He's as big as anybody, certainly there in the interior of the defensive line. And the interior defensive line needs to step up, and they need to be able to play a great game against that interior Penn State defense. They need to be able to shed blocks, no doubt. He, along with Amari Washington, I think can give the interior offensive line of Penn State a little bit of trouble. He's really starting to get better each and every single game. He's starting to get better each and every single week. Maybe this could be his performance alongside Amari Washington where he really starts to break out. Man, there's so many candidates in this game. When you have as deep of a roster as Oregon has, you have a lot of guys that can step up in a game like this. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. Has anybody been talking about who Oregon plays this week? Anybody know at all who the Ducks are matching up with? Of course, everybody's been talking about it. Everybody knows. Everybody's known that this has been a circled game for some time, one that everybody has been looking forward to. The third-ranked Penn State Nittany Lions are the foe this week. They enter with a 3-0 record against, an extremely soft non-conference schedule. James Franklin is entering his 12th season as head coach in Happy Valley. And the Nittany Lions have as good of a combination of coordinators as you are going to find across the country. The very creative Andy Kotelnicki is the offensive coordinator and maybe the best out there. Jim Knowles coordinates this defense for Penn State. You know, when you cover a team like Oregon and you watch a team like Oregon every single week, you have kind of like a certain expectation of what an offense should look like for a team that's like in the top 10. For a team that's in the top 5. And then you kind of look at what Penn State has been against a very low caliber of opponent. And I think words that kind of come to mind when I see that, and then when I attach the number 3 ranking and the type of expectations that Penn State has coming into this season, the words that I kind of come to are unexplosive, very methodical, and once again, considering the rankings and the expectations, a little bit unimpressive this season. When there's one like group of stats in every single one of these games that stuck out to me against these lower levels of competition, they've kind of started off in these games a little bit slow. Really, all 3 of them. Look at some of these opening drives versus Nevada. Their first 4 drives, you had 2 field goals and 2 touchdowns. Okay, they're all scoring drives, and that's certainly what you want. You were able to score on each possession, but they weren't able to finish with a score on half of those drives. How about FIU? Just 1 touchdown in their 7 drives. This is what their first 7 drives looked like against the Panthers. Turnover on downs, touchdown, turnover on downs, punt, field goal, turnover on downs, and a field goal. And then against Villanova, just 1 touchdown in their first 4 drives. Touchdown, punt, field goal, punt, and then, another field goal was actually their 5th drive in that game against the Wildcats. This is a Nittany Lions offense that very much wants to be able to be physical with you. They want to be able to run the football. This is a team, when I say that they are unexplosive, I think the film not only bears that out, but I also think some of these in-depth metrics and the stats really plays that out. Drew Aller has only thrown 9% of throws past 20 yards this season, and 56% of the passes have been within 10 yards this year. Like, when you look at Aller specifically, he has a below 40 Pro Football Focus passing grade on throws beyond 20 yards. I'm going to do a little bit of a hard stop there with Aller because the scouting report, there's going to be a lot of breakdown of 15. Over on Big Ten Ted, the last few years, I've been a big supporter of Aller. Okay, that first year, okay, let's let him develop. We know he's a 5-star talent. Then it was, okay, let's see him. Let's get him better wide receivers. Let's get him better weapons. And he's had better weapons so far this season. And I think we see a lot of the same stuff. And it's really a microcosm of Penn State. They've got all these players coming back. They've got all of this experience coming back. But and I've talked about this before. Dan Lanning has talked about this before. When you look at experience versus talent, I'm not necessarily saying Penn State has plateaued, but a lot of what I've seen, at least early in the season, has looked like a lot of what we saw kind of last year, where it's not guys are, going beyond maybe what we thought that ceiling was in 2024. I think we see a lot of early in 2025. We see a lot of what Penn State was so far in 2024 without some of the guys that they lost, like the Abdul Carters and the Tyler Warrens of the world. Anyway, back to Drew Aller. Drew Aller is one of those guys where I'm like, he doesn't look like he's improved all that much. It doesn't look like we're getting a different version of Drew Aller. At some point, maybe you just need to sit back and accept this is what 15 in blue and white is going to be. Did he come to Penn State as a 5-star quarterback with extremely high expectations? Maybe he'll be the best quarterback in Penn State history? Yes, absolutely. But kind of like, if it walks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, then it's probably a duck. I'm not saying Drew Aller throws ducks. I'm not trying to say that. I think Drew Aller is a really good quarterback. But when we're talking about great quarterbacks, we're talking about elite quarterbacks, like a Heisman level quarterback, a first-round draft pick, a second-round draft pick, I'm not sure that's what we see. That's not what I see when I watch Drew Aller right now. And the thing with Drew is sometimes it's the easy throws that are a little bit difficult for him. He's got a 36.7 Pro Football Focus grade beyond the line of scrimmage. We've seen during his career that we haven't really seen it this year, but when he's under pressure, he kind of folds up shop a little bit. He kind of folded up shop in that semifinal game against Notre Dame. Now, we go back to I want to talk about wide receivers for a minute. The guys that Drew is throwing to. I think the big thing this year was okay, you lose all your main receivers from last year. Now you bring in 3 new receivers. I believe that the wideouts this year are an upgrade. Okay, you got Trevor Pena coming in from Syracuse. You got Kyron Hudson coming in from USC. You've got Devontae Ross coming in from Troy. But I look at all of the skill sets. I'm not sure if I see a number 1 go-to wide receiver. In fact, I'm very confident that I don't see a go-to number 1 wide receiver on this team. Trevor Pena was working in a great role last year coming out of the slot, and I think that's probably his most comfortable role. But you see him lined up outside a lot more. You see Kyron Hudson lined up on the inside a lot more. I think you got slot receivers. I think these top 3 probably fit best on the inside of the formation and what that position really does. But you need to put some of these guys on the outside, and right now, I'm not sure if that's their strength. When I look at the concepts that Penn State has shown on film so far this season, I said it before, they don't throw a lot of deep stuff. There's been a couple of plays that they've been able to hook up with, but for most of it, Drew Aller is 2 of 8, I think, on throws over 20 yards this season. And the thing with Drew throwing the deep ball, he throws a very different deep ball than we're used to with Dante Moore at Oregon. It's got a ton of air under the ball. You certainly see his arm strength. You see his arm strength on a lot of the different throws that Drew can make. But that ball, I swear, goes a mile into the air. And sometimes that allows the defensive back to be able to catch up and be able to recover in that type of situation. Like Dante is almost the complete opposite. Dante is a ball where he's throwing it 40, 50 yards on an absolute frozen rope. And sometimes he probably needs to put a little bit more air under the ball to allow his receivers to be able to run under it so far. They love the out routes. They love that out-breaking concept. That's one thing that I've seen. They run it really well right now. Drew Aller is probably throwing that ball better than anybody right now. Like from 0 to 9 yards outside the numbers, he's 15 of 19 this season. So they've certainly got that part to their offense down right now. Devontae Ross only has 5 catches this season, and I thought he would be like the explosive guy. And look, we're only a couple of games into the year. We got 9 games to go for the Nittany Lions, but he's probably their most explosive option. He is the highest. He only has 5 catches this year, but he's averaging 15.4 yards per catch, which is the highest on the team so far this year. Of course, Penn State is what they want to be able to do best when they're on schedule. They're being physical with you up front on the offensive line, and they are running the football. Let's start first on the offensive line, actually, before I get to the running backs. Big, experienced guy. I believe there's 4 starters returning from this group. Anthony Donko, 6'5", 324. He's at guard. Nick Dawkins at 6'4", 300. There's a name I can't pronounce, but Ione is the last name there at the other guard, 6'4", 328. And at tackles, you've got Nolan Rucci, 6'8", 304. Drew Shelton at 6'5", 306. So specifically in the middle, these are guys that they just want to dominate you with their size up front. They want to be able to just control the line of scrimmage and then work Drew Aller with some play action and then see if they can get favorable matchups. Because if Drew Aller has to kind of put a game on his back with his arm, I don't think that's the position that Penn State wants to be able to be in. They want to be able to control the tempo. They want to be methodical. That's just what they want to be. Like, in a lot of ways, they kind of remind me a lot like Michigan. You know, is Drew Aller a lot like J.J. McCarthy? Maybe that's a different discussion for a different day. But in so many ways, that's just how they feel. Like, Drew is not going to impress you with a lot of the throws down the field because I think Penn State wants to play a game where they don't want Drew to have to impress people because of the strength that they have up front on the offensive line. Before I get to the run game, I do want to talk about their tackles, Nolan Rucci and Drew Shelton. The tackles aren't the greatest right now. Shelton had a 25.5 Pro Football Focus pass blocker against Nevada. He's gotten better each and every single game, but he's not the best. I see pass rushers raking his arms away and doing a variety of moves to be able to get by on him right now. I think Rucci probably is the more consistent pass blocker out of the two right now. Let's talk about these running backs, the aforementioned running backs. You know, when Katron Allen and Nick Singleton came out of high school, Nick Singleton was the can't-miss 5-star. Katron Allen, I believe, was like a high 4-star type of prospect. But I believe over time, Katron Allen has become the more complete running back. He's kind of more well-known as like the more powerful running back, but he's really developed his ability to break it to the outside. He's really developed his open field run game and his speed a lot more since he's been at Penn State. You know, Penn State force-fed Nick Singleton early and often in the Villanova game. He's yet to really have a breakout run. That's kind of what we've seen from Penn State with Nick Singleton, is he has the ability to take it 60 yards at any time, 70 yards at any time. But when you take a look at that, like, consistent run game, like, you're not going to be able to obviously break every run for that type of yardage. When you take a look at that consistent run game that you can lean on, that can be a little bit more of a workhorse, I believe that's more Katron Allen right now. So I think Penn State, what they want to do in that run game is really probably ride 13 most of the time and then see if they can create an explosive play down the field, open up an explosive run lane for Singleton. It hasn't happened yet. It will happen at some point this season. Will it happen Saturday night? There's only one way to find out. At tight end for Penn State, last year, of course, they had Tyler Warren, which was a do-everything. This is a Penn State offense that's less gimmicky, right? Because, you know, remember, Warren, he's taking snaps. They're putting, I think that was the USC game where they're snapping the ball to Tyler Warren. He throws it to Aller. And then somehow Warren Warren snapped it is what happened. Tyler Warren snapped it to Aller. He goes down the middle of the field and makes a crazy catch. There's some, you still see it. It's still Andy Kotelnicki there's less gimmicky stuff because they don't really have a talent like Tyler Warren in this offense. Luke Reynolds is a tight end that they were very excited about, even on last year's team. He's more of a traditional type of guy. He's not going to be taking snaps. He's not going to be throwing the ball. He's not going to be running the ball out of like a wild lion type of formation, but he's certainly a really good player. He's been very much involved in this offense so far this season. But overall, unexplosive, methodical, I think are two ways to describe this Nittany Lion offense. Let's head to the defensive side of the football. Well, it's just another year, just another ho-hum year in Happy Valley, where their edges are as good as anybody right now in college football. Chop Robinson was a first-round pick. You had Abdul Carter, who moved from linebacker to edge, was just unstoppable last season. He had double-digit sacks. He's with the New York Giants now. I mean, even a guy like Micah Parsons, who played linebacker at Penn State during his time there, he transitioned to be one of the best edge rushers in the NFL now with the Green Bay Packers. And Dennis Sutton is the next great one. He's got a really good combination of size, power, and speed coming off the edge. So he's kind of a bigger guy at that position. But true freshman Chaz Coleman presents a smaller frame, but he's kind of more of he's still like at 6'4". He's more of a twitchy, athletic, kind of speed guy coming off the edge. Zariah Fisher is another guy that you need to be able to keep an eye on. But right now, it's DDS and Coleman, I think, are really the threats coming off the edge for the Nittany line. Zane Durant is an interesting piece in the interior of their defensive line. He's been starting for multiple years. To me, I think he's kind of a tweener. Like, I don't think he's been big. His size isn't quite there for him to declare for the NFL draft to be an NFL interior nose tackle or defensive tackle. He's sitting there at 287 pounds. And I don't know if he's like quick enough or like, I think he's a threat as a pass rusher, but I don't know if he's quite that good enough or has been that good enough as a pass rusher to be like an NFL type of pass rusher. They've been playing him on the interior defensive line ever since he's been in Happy Valley. So he's kind of that tweener, not big enough, to maybe be that next level defensive tackle, but maybe not quick enough and has the skill set on the move set to maybe be an NFL edge rusher these past years as well. But he's still certainly a really good presence in there. They move him around a lot. I saw some packages where he's lined up coming off the edge. You got Zane Durant on one side. You got Dennis Sutton or Chance Coleman or Fisher or somebody else on the other side. So this is a Jim Knowles defensive front. We'll talk about Knowles in just a minute. There's a lot of guys rotating in. Alonzo Ford is the other defensive tackle that you'll see. He's right around that 300-pound mark. So there's not a ton of size in the interior of the Penn State defensive line. Durant, more of a pass rush presence, as I said, than maybe a guy that can clog run lanes that would have a bigger body. You go to the linebacking core. They've got a really good linebacking core right now, and it's deep. Amari Campbell transferring over from North Carolina leads the team in tackles right now. Tony Rojas, Dom DeLuca are guys that have been on this team for a few years and are certainly experienced. Campbell and Rojas are 2 of 3 Penn State defenders with double-digit tackles this season. You go to the secondary. I think it's good. It's probably really good. I'm just not sure if it's great or elite. Reading some stuff of how Penn State fans felt preseason, they said this was probably maybe the deepest secondary that they've had. And they've had some good players. I mean, Joey Porter Jr. was a first-round pick in the NFL. There have been others that have been drafted throughout these last couple of years. A.J. Harris is their top corner returning. He was an honorable mention All-Big Ten guy last season. Zakee Wheatley and King Mack are their safeties. King Mack started at Penn State, went to Alabama, I believe, and now he's back at Penn State. Zion Tracy out there at the nickel spot. A lot like, just Penn State in a nutshell. These are really experienced guys. How talented are they when they face off against a really explosive team? Well, you got to know. We're going to find that out on Saturday. Man, Jim Knowles working with elite players. It's just a dangerous combination right now for Penn State. I think where Penn State is really going to hurt you is when they can just unleash on the defensive line, is when they can unleash coming off the edge. That's where Penn State has hurt you in the past, and I think that's what their roster and their personnel, I think, really dictates so far this season. Okay, folks, you know the foe. Now it's time to take a look on how the Quack can attack on Big Ten Saturday night. The 6th-ranked Oregon Ducks going into maybe the most hostile environment not named Autzen Stadium in the country, taking on the third-ranked Nittany Lions of Penn State. The blue and white are 3.5-point home favorites. The over-under in this one is 51.5. It all goes down Saturday, 4:30 p.m. Pacific time, Big Ten Saturday night on NBC. Noah Eagle, Todd Blackledge, and Catherine Tappan will be on the call in this game. There's one word that I think really goes into both of these teams, and I think applies to both of these teams. Pressure. We know that there is pressure on Penn State this season. I think the thought that I have about the Nittany Lions, considering what they have coming back, considering that they have just not been able to get over the hump, this is the year. If it's not going to be this year, I don't know if it's ever going to be a year where they make the run towards a national championship and get these big wins under James Franklin. Penn State is coming off of a bye. They're at home. It's a whiteout. They have complained. Penn State fans have been complaining every single year. We need to get a big game, the whiteout. We don't want to play into these games against the Michigans and the Ohio States of the world on Big Noon, on Fox. We've been playing Washington. We've been playing a lower-ranked Auburn team, Minnesota, Iowa, some of these other teams. It's time to get a big game and really show off what a big game atmosphere is like in Happy Valley, and they got it. They got everything they want right now. Now it's time to deliver. Penn State is a team that has not been able to deliver in these types of spots, but their record has been great in the whiteout, certainly over the years. So the pressure is on them right now to deliver. I look at the other side for the Oregon Ducks. There is pressure for them to play competitively. If Penn State goes out there and they just run all over Oregon, Dante Moore turns the ball over, and it is just a pitiful performance. Considering what we saw in the Rose Bowl, and then you follow it up with this in a big game, all of a sudden, people are going to start talking about Dan Lanning. Dude, when he gets into a big game, we know maybe this is not the correct narrative because of what happened last year against Ohio State at home and on a neutral field against Penn State in the Big Ten Championship, but there could be a little bit of a narrative that says, man, lately just Dan can't get his guys ready to go for a big game. But to be honest with you, I think most of the pressure, like 70 to 80% of the pressure right now, is on the Penn State Nittany Lions. I think Oregon is going to be able to sit back there and be like, we're a 3.5-point underdog. A lot of people out there are picking Penn State. We have nothing to lose. Let's play loose. Let's let her rip. We know let her rip was the theme for Oregon in that game against Oklahoma State. And it's safe to say, I certainly think they let her rip in that type of matchup. So I'm curious to see how tight maybe Penn State is playing early in this game, how loose and confident the Ducks are playing early on in this game. Pressure. All about pressure. The thing about pressure, when you crush it, it creates a diamond. Who's going to be that diamond in this game when 60 minutes are completed? Now, there's multiple ways, I think, for both of these teams to win this game. I probably think there's more ways for the Ducks to come out on top than there are the Nittany Lions. But overall, I think is when you look at this game from 10,000 feet in the air, I think that this is the ultimate battle of power versus speed. Penn State wants to dominate the line of scrimmage. One, because that's what their personnel dictates that they can do best. And number two, obviously, they want to keep Oregon's explosive offense on the sideline. Penn State's sure path to victory is playing dominant at the line of scrimmage. Okay? If they get a push with that big veteran offensive line and they're shoving Oregon defenders off, they're getting to that second level, they're going to win. Let me just put it that way. If they're playing that type of dominant performance at the line of scrimmage, they're going to come out with a W on Saturday. So that's the power that they want to be able to play with. Whereas on the other side with Oregon, I mean, they've got an explosiveness advantage on the perimeter. I mean, their playmakers are just miles above and miles better than Penn State right now. We'll get into the quarterback conversation in just a minute. I don't think it's all that close that Dante is a better quarterback than Drew Aller in this game, but more on that here in just a minute. I think Oregon's going to come out. I think they're going to try to take shots. I think they're going to try to get explosive early on in this game. Get out to that lead. Force Penn State to keep up with your explosiveness, because I think if we get into this battle, we're going back and forth, and it's kind of like this offensive battle. I know Penn State hung around in the Big Ten championship game last year, but when I look at this year's roster, I just think Oregon's better at creating more explosive plays down the field. I think they're faster. I just think they're better out there this season. I just think you get into that back and forth type of game where Oregon's putting up points on offense. I don't think Penn State can keep up over a 60-minute game if Oregon is playing that way. Now, I'll say this about when I talked about, I believe Oregon has more ways that they can come out with a victory against Penn State. Keep an eye on the Ducks' interior run game. Penn State is undersized in the middle of their defensive line. You've got Dave Iuli sitting there at 339. You got Poncho at center at 325. And Pregnant's probably the best run blocker out of all of these guys, the best offensive lineman, out of all of these guys. And he's sitting there at 318. Here's like a early game plan that I could very well see happening for Will Stein. Let's get the big plays going early. Let's kind of quiet the energy. You're never going to completely quiet a whiteout crowd. Let's just put it that way. It's probably the biggest and baddest environment that there is in college football. Autzen Stadium is certainly up there before, as I said. But I think you want to kind of create those explosive plays early, get those points on the board, get that lead, and then if you're able to get that lead, and then you're able to really be physical up front. You get Noah Whittington running between the tackles. You get these guys up front that I just talked about on the offensive line. You get their size leaning into the Alonzo Fords of the world and the Zane Durants of the world. Zane Durant, he got pushed around in last year's Big Ten championship game. You saw the size advantage that Oregon even had last year in the interior, and they're much better on the interior on the offensive line this year. So if they're able to get out to that early lead with the explosiveness and then kind of mix in the run game where they're able to kind of rattle off some longer drives, choose some clock, take some time and some possessions away from Penn State, that seems like a pretty good formula to be able to come out on top in this game. And also when you run the ball for Oregon, it sets up that more traditional play action attack that we've seen so far from the Ducks this season. Okay, I've seen so many things that have been different. Last year with Dylan Gabriel, it's a lot of shotgun, it's a lot of clap. It's a lot of like more newer, more modern, a college type of approach on offense. Whereas this year, you're hearing a snap count from Dante Moore. You're going back to the defense, play action. So now you run the ball, you establish that interior run game, and then we talk about the explosiveness on the perimeter. You hit them with play action, you get protection. We'll talk about protection here in just a minute. But then you're able to hit those one-on-one plays down the field. Maybe you get the linebackers to be able to step up, and you can get Kenya State 20 to 25 yards over the middle, get a matchup with the safety, and you win that battle. You get a deep post from someone like DeCorian Moore or Malik Benson. Maybe the corners are playing a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage. Like, there's matchup advantage, I think, for Oregon if they're able to execute that type of game plan. Okay, I want to talk about the offensive tackles now, and then we'll get into the quarterbacks. We'll get into Dante Moore here in just a moment. These are edge rushers for Penn State that are really, really good. I think Penn State has the advantage when we're talking about offensive tackles versus edge rushing, a pass rushing type of situation, which I think is another key why Oregon needs to be able to run the ball. You get yourselves into 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10 in a whiteout type of atmosphere. You allow these Penn State pass rushers to pin their ears back, they're going to win battles against Isaiah World and Alex Harkey. I think the offensive tackles for Oregon have been, we'll call it inconsistent this season against lower levels of competition. There's been people that know more about ball than I do that have been talking about that, not only this week, but throughout the other weeks as well. It's anchor for Isaiah World. It's lean for Alex Harkey. But, Dennis Sutton is a powerful guy, and he's a powerful rusher. And when you take a look at someone like Isaiah World, where he's got to be able to get lower, he's got to be able to get more anchor, as guys like Landon Tengwall said this week, Jeff Schwartz has said it, QB11 has said it on his podcast as well, guys that really have access to the film and guys that are able to watch every single play from multiple angles. If he's not able to anchor and if he's not able to get low against someone like DDS is just going to get into his chest and he's going to drive him back. And Isaiah World, 78, is going to be driven into the back of Dante Moore pretty consistently. So they've got to be able to find a way. Chaz Coleman presents a more athletic pass rushing threat, I think, on the other side as well. It would not surprise me to see in some of these passing situations, bring in an extra tight end, play a lot more 12 personnel to be able to chip, give World, give Harkey maybe a little bit more of a chance to be able to help them out right now. They got to put up or shut up. Right? Plain and simple. They have to play a good game. If Dante Moore is constantly under pressure, and we don't know how Dante Moore is going to react when he's constantly under pressure in this type of environment. The last time we saw Dante Moore when he was under a lot of pressure, we saw him at UCLA turning the football over a lot. Now, I think you and I both know, going back to school for that year last year and what he's been able to do, he looks like he's making much better decisions with the football, albeit against lower caliber competition. But how is he going to react in that situation? Oregon maybe doesn't want to live in that world. They want to live in a world kind of like they did in the Big Ten Championship game last year, where Josh Connerly was just owning that battle against Abdul Carter. So however you can help out World and Harkey, and maybe World and Harkey just play out of their minds in this game, but however you can keep Dante as clean as possible and avoid these pass rushing situations where these edge rushers are able to just pin their ears back and win these battles, that's where you want to get to. That's a huge key. Maybe one of the biggest keys, I believe, in this football game. Let's talk about Dante Moore a little bit. I said it before. I think Dante Moore is better than Drew Aller. I don't think it's particularly close. Todd McShay said on the Ringer podcast with Bill Simmons this week, he said, dude, he might be QB1 in college football right now. You might be looking at 1 year of Dante Moore before he's headed off to the NFL. Dante is completing 75% of his passes. Drew Aller's completing 65% of his passes. And I think Dante, not saying Oregon has played a difficult schedule of any kind, but Dante and Oregon have played a more difficult schedule right now and a tougher competition than Drew Aller and Penn State. Like, what a huge stage this is for both of these quarterbacks. Drew needs to be able to deliver in this type of game. But for Dante, this is a huge stage. A huge stage for him to really prove that it just wasn't a weak competition. That he truly is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. If there's one quarterback that I trust that can go out there and win a football game, it's Dante Moore. I trust a lot more that Dante can make the throws to win rather than Drew Aller right now. For Oregon defensively, you need to stop the run at all costs. It would not surprise me to see Oregon creep extra personnel into the box. We've seen like Dylan Thiemann play closer to the line of scrimmage. We've seen how good Aaron Flowers has been in run defense this season. It wouldn't surprise me to see, like Dalen Austin and Jaden Kennedy kind of bow in a little bit more to just be able to stop that run. Because I talked about Aller, I talked about these receivers, and then when I look at Oregon's corners, Iffy, Brandon, they are going to be tested. The redshirt freshman and a true freshman in this type of environment, how are they going to respond? But I think they're more athletic. I think they're just better. I think that the secondary is better and as a better matchup against Penn State's wide receivers. So you bring extra personnel into the box to be able to stop the run, and those defensive line, they need to be able to shed blocks. You can't allow these Penn State offensive linemen to engage, get to that next level, because once they're able to get to the linebackers, once they're able to get a hand on Jerry Mixon, once they're able to get a hand on and a shoulder on Bryce Betcher, that's when you get those 10, 15, 20, 25-yard runs, and and then Penn State is really able to do what they want to be able to do. So whatever you have to do, you need to stop the run, and you need to prevent Nick Singleton from breaking loose. We haven't really seen it so far this season, but we do know he is a home run threat, for this Penn State team right now. Oregon's defense also needs to be able to finish in the red zone and prevent Penn State from finishing in the red zone. Penn State hasn't been fantastic at finishing drives this season, so holding Nittany Lions to field goals like some lower-level teams have been able to do, I think is going to help out Oregon's offense when all is said and done. Here's the last thing I want to finish off with. I know this has been a long one. It's been a long one, but, rightfully so, right? How much is the whiteout worth? Remember last year at Autzen Stadium? At Autzen, I think it was worth a lot. I think Autzen is the factor that propelled Oregon to victory in that game against Ohio State last season. How much of an advantage does the whiteout give Penn State? Because this is an inexperienced Oregon team going into an environment like they've never seen before, right? A lot of young guys on this team. I think the key is get Dante Moore settled in. How is he able to handle the moment? Is he able to take it on and really rise to the occasion? Is he able to settle in? Or is Penn State able to get that aforementioned pressure that I said, and then the energy just keeps on building and building and building and building for this whiteout crowd? The energy, I think, is going to be something to keep an eye on as this game kind of really goes along. The Ducks need to do whatever they need to be able to do to kind of get this game to settle down as early as possible for a quarterback that's going into this type of an environment for the very first time. Okay, folks, we've been talking for a while. It is finally time to put it all out on the line. I've been saying a lot of things where I'm like, yeah, Oregon has more ways to win. I feel like they're more explosive. I feel like they have the better quarterback. But my gut is just telling me something different. My gut is telling me Penn State. And it's telling me Penn State 30-28 because of a couple of reasons. Home field advantage. We saw what home field advantage could do for Oregon last season in a big game where maybe the other team had more talent. The experience. Penn State, with the amount of players that have been in these types of battles, I think makes a difference. There's a lot of freshmen. There's a lot of sophomores. There's a lot of first-year starters out there for Oregon. We're not sure how they're going to be able to handle this type of environment. Penn State has been in these types of battles and these types of environments. And I've said it multiple times. I think Penn State has an edge advantage, coming off the edge against Oregon's offensive tackles. I got this feeling that that's going to be a battle all night long and one that Oregon might not win in this game. I hope they win, but right now I'm maybe not the most optimistic about that. This game has the feeling kind of like Oregon, just in a flip sense from last year, where you've got this team that has a great home field environment against another team that's probably more talented than you, but the home team gets the victory in the regular season, and then if these two teams match up later on, and Oregon now has 11, 12, 13, whatever games under their belt, you get Penn State on a neutral field in the playoffs, then that feels like where Penn State gets the edge and gets the win. I don't think Oregon's going undefeated this year, okay? Let me say that right now. They got to get a loss somewhere, and maybe that kind of plays into my prediction a little bit right here, but it is going to be a fantastic game. I cannot wait for this matchup. All right, folks, that'll do it. That'll wrap up this edition of That Show Out West. Saturday night, we will be live following the game for that post-game show at West, so make sure you come on by to YouTube. Last week was not able to do it. My dog, Wally, you've seen him if you follow me on Twitter and the YouTube posts. We take a pregame picture each and every single week, and he was pretty sick on Saturday. But he was kind of on the mend once we got to Monday, once we got to Tuesday. Wally's going to be back for the pregame photo, so that's why I wasn't able to do the postgame show last week, because I kind of had to have all of my attention, or as much as my attention, on Wally as I possibly could. But we're going to be back. I'm going to be back. It's going to be a good time. Tune in. You might see Wally during the postgame show. But I'm going to offer my takeaways first of all. I'm going to save the top performers for Monday. So we're going to get in. I'm going to talk for about 10 to 15 minutes. And then it's going to be all calls. It's going to be all texts. It's going to be all chats. I can't wait. I got a feeling the postgame show is going to be on fire either way. All right, folks, enjoy your Saturday. For those of you traveling out there, safe travels. Enjoy this once-in-a-lifetime bucket list type of experience. We'll talk to you Saturday. Until then, I'm Ted LaRue. This has been That Show Out West.